Hello and welcome to the European Parliament in Brussels for this new edition of Talking Europe. Europeans were hoping to use the G20 summit in Cannes as a show of unity. 1 week after the adoption of an ambitious plan to try and tackle the Eurozone debt crisis, Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy were hoping to show the world that Europe was back in order. But the troublesome European family was plunged into a new crisis this week after the Greek Prime Minister George Papandreou announced he would hold a referendum on the European bailout. The announcement, which came out of the blue, shocked Greece's partners, who are now openly asking whether Greece has its place in the European family. So could Greece be forced to leave the Eurozone? I'll put this question to my guest who will soon join me on this set. Also, don't miss the second part of Talking Europe. We'll bring you a close-up interview with Etienne Davignon, former Vice President of the European Commission and current President of the Friends of Europe think tank. But as always, we'll start on our set here at the European Parliament. Let me introduce you to my three guests today, starting to my right with Kostas Kargagiannis. Hello, you are EU correspondent with the Greek daily Kati Merini. Also on this set, Said El Khadraoui, you're a Belgian MEP with the Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. And last but not least, from the UK, Bruno Waterfield. You are the European Affairs correspondent with the Daily Telegraph. Welcome. Kostas, we'll start with you as the Greek representative on this set. The announcement of the referendum on Monday by the Greek Prime Minister came as a surprise. It shocked Greece's European partners. Do you
Greece
think,
as well.
And Greece as well. You'll tell us why. Do you think it was irresponsible, or was it his democratic duty?
No, I think the timing was totally irresponsible, and it was a highly opportunistic move by Mr. Papandreou to do. One could argue that it is a democratic duty of the Prime Minister to hold a referendum on such a serious issue. Well, maybe yes, but not now. I mean, not just after the conclusion of the agreement in Brussels about the new bailout package, which has to be still has to be finalized. So that's not the time to open such an issue.
And so, very briefly, tell us what prompted your Prime Minister to take this decision without warning his partners?
I can only guess, but my best guess is that he simply wanted to shift the responsibility from his own shoulders and from the shoulders of his MPs to the shoulders of the Greek people.
Said, what do you make of this surprise announcement? As Kostas said, 4 days after a historic deal to tackle the Eurozone debt crisis, 4 days before a G20 summit, what do you make of it?
Well, obviously his majority was shrinking in the parliament. People got angry, were in the streets manifesting against the austerity measures. The opposition was not helping, not supporting the austerity measures, neither the package that was agreed on. So he wanted to force the opposition as well as like the stakeholders in Greece to be in favor of this. And if he would win the referendum, obviously his position would be strengthened. And I think that was the reasoning behind this.
But that is an extremely risky gamble, knowing what is at stake.
It is, but other people could argue that, yes, finally people have a say on something very important, because don't forget, these austerity measures will have as a consequence that the average Greek people will have 20 to 30% less revenues than compared to today. So there is an impoverishment of the Greek people. And it's a huge price for getting out of this crisis, but maybe a necessary one, and you have to explain it. And a referendum is a possibility to really explain what it is at stake.
Bruno Waterfield, we know that the British public is always calling for a referendum on European issues. There's a sense in Britain that the public is not consulted. What do you make of this referendum in Greece in a very particular context, obviously?
Well, I mean, you described the agreement from last week as historic. I don't think it was historic. If the word historic could be applied to the agreements and bureaucratic fixes that have been dreamt up so far, they've historically failed. And that's why the Eurozone could tip the whole world economy into a recession. I think in that context, having a referendum isn't a bad thing. You made some good points about why popular votes are a good idea. One of the really important things about a popular vote is you have a contest, you have a debate. Other people start putting up opposing ideas and alternatives. And I think that would actually be quite good for Europe as a whole, because I mean, one of the real features of this discussion so far is that the public's been locked out, ignored.
Where we see markets panicking, where we see the fire spreading, do you think we have time for this debate?
I really, and I'm completely with the Germans on this. I mean, the markets can do what they want, but sovereign states, and particularly democratically sovereign states, should proceed at the pace that they think is fitting for themselves and their peoples. In fact, one of the problems that we have at the moment is that people have responded too readily to the markets, and not only that, certain leaders have used the markets against other leaders, which has set a very dangerous precedent in European affairs.
Is that the feeling in Greece, that we still have time?
No. Time is of the essence, and that's why the Greek politicians have to move really fast this time. They were dragging their feet since the start of this crisis. There is no room to do this anymore. So we need to conclude the negotiations with the private sector and with the EU and the IMF concerning the second bailout.
In your view, would a national unity government be best equipped to take care of the situation in Greece?
Yes, it looks like that, and certainly it would be the quickest solution, because it could start right away this task.
Now, one of the consequences of the shock announcement by Mr. Papandreou was, of course, what happened in Cannes on Wednesday night. Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy held a press conference in which they, for the first time, evoked the possibility of Greece leaving the Eurozone. This is an old taboo. 1 month ago, everybody was telling you this is impossible. Now we're hearing that it's possible. Mr. El Khadraoui, are they really serious when Merkel and Sarkozy say that Greece could leave the Eurozone? Do you think they really believe it?
Well, I hope not. I think that they want to put some pressure on the Greek people to vote in favor, if there would be a referendum, to vote in favor of the package that was agreed. Going out of the Eurozone is legally very difficult, because the aim of all member states, the goal of all member states, is to, at some point, adopt the euro. So it is not kind of easy to.
Are you saying that Greece could be forced to leave the EU altogether?
Well, that would be a logical consequence if you think that way. But there is another thing. Leaving the euro would also mean de facto a devaluation of the money, because the drachma would be reintroduced at a lower rate, of course, than the euro today, which means that in a normal circumstances, devaluation are organized in a kind of surprise timing, you know. We don't know it in advance. Here, this all would be organized in advance, which means that people would withdraw all their euros from the Greek banks, would put it somewhere in their house, hoping to, well, not to have this reduction of the value of the money. So it would create a lot of problems, including the fact that the debt, of course, would remain in euros. So
with the devaluation,
the debt would be even higher. So the
right.
problem would not be solved. The only positive thing would be that Greece would become more competitive and could maybe export.
Could devalue its way into recovery,
exactly.
potentially.
But that would be a big problem.
Bruno, what do you make of this prospect of Greece leaving the Eurozone? We've always been told that this would create a dangerous precedent and that the markets could well anticipate further victims. I'm thinking of Italy.
Well, I don't think the markets would enjoy the prospect of the country leaving the Eurozone because of the whole issue of devaluation that's just been explained. It would also mean a default on a massive level of previous sovereign signatures on Greek debt. It couldn't mean anything else. You couldn't allow Greek debt to remain in euros while the drachma was introduced. So it's not a prospect that markets, I would have thought, would look forward to. Legally, it's impossible. I mean, there is a clause in the Lisbon Treaty that allows a country, should it wish, to leave the European Union but not to leave the Eurozone. So if Greece was to leave the Eurozone, unless some very special European Council agreement could be found, it also means leaving the Union, and it means losing regional aid and agriculture.
So in your view, Merkel and Sarkozy are using this threat to put pressure on Greece, but they're not serious?
Well, I think they were wanting to couch it as an in or out matter, as Papandreou was himself. But I think actually they were expressing a certain frustration as well. I don't think just with the Greek government, but also with what is happening at the moment, where we keep having these meetings, it keeps unravelling, and I think there's a certain level of frustration over the lack of a grip and purchase they have on the crisis.
Certainly a sense of chaos, which can be very humiliating when you're meeting with your Chinese and American counterparts, I imagine, in Cannes. Now, Kostas, when you look at polls, over 70% of the Greek people say they want to retain the euro.
Indeed, I'm happy about that. But this is the crucial question the Greek people have to think about, whether there is a referendum or not. Do we want to remain a member of the Eurozone, yes or no? If the answer is yes, we have to accept the second rescue package, including the harsh austerity measures, the harsh reforms that go with it. If not, we should be aware of which are the consequences of potential exit from the Eurozone. I think they would be totally catastrophic for Greece and very, very dangerous for the rest of the Eurozone. But nevertheless, we have to think hard about this question.
I fully understand Greek people are frustrated because they have a feeling they are paying the price for mistakes others made. The political system since 20, 30 years in Greece. And they are going to pay for many years, because even if the package is agreed and implemented, the Greek debt will be at the level of 120% by 2020. And
these are the most optimistic.
That's the most optimistic projections.
And then 2% annual growth.
Yes, and then it's supposed to continue to decrease until it's at 60%. So what we need to do at the European level, together with the Greeks, is of course to give some perspective to the Greek people, some hope. And therefore I think that we need, together with a clever austerity plan, also have a more ambitious European-wide investment and growth plan, so that people feel and see that it is not in vain they are paying all of this, but at the end of the day, in a number of years, not too far from here, growth will be there again, and jobs will be there again. And I think this is something we need to look at more in depth at the European level.
Bruno, do you believe that this is still possible for Greece to return growth through a large European investment campaign in the country?
I don't see why it shouldn't be, but I do think that there is a problem, and it's not just a Greek problem, with the level of debt that very sluggish European economies have accumulated, and they've accumulated because central banks don't want to see defaults or write-downs in senior bank debt, i.e. the debt that's owned by banks, but also where that has spilled over into sovereign bonds. And I do think, outside of Greece as well, there is going to be a real debate about why it is that a lot of public money is being used to support this particular kind of debt and isn't being used to invest in growth, for example. And I think that debate we are really going to see coming alive over the next couple of years. And again, it's why I would recommend a referendum, because it would start to unlock some of the discussions that perhaps haven't been had yet so far.
And there is also the debate about tax collection, because in Greece we know that the tax collection is not working very well since many years. Almost 80 billion euros is somewhere in the Swiss bank accounts. People do not all pay their taxes.
Tax evasion.
Tax evasion is, I think, also an issue which should be addressed.
It is one of the central issues.
Yes, exactly.
But why has it been impossible for the new government to address this issue at this crucial time?
because it didn't want to tackle the problem. Why people in Greece are getting desperate? Because the PASOK government, who is now collapsing, never wanted to make reforms that would boost growth, that would modernize Greece, that would, and that's the most important thing, that would demolish, destroy this system that has been developed in Greece over the last 30 years of political patronage, of having party armies who are being sustained by the state. So this huge clientel system has to be destroyed. But this is exactly the core of the problem. The Greek politicians, and not only the government, but also the opposition parties, never wanted to destroy this clientel system. And they did everything in their power in order to preserve it. It was obvious from the start that the Greek state should cut its expenses. It never happened. Instead, the Greek government chose the way of raising taxes again and again over the very same people, and that's the problem.
Well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there as we're running out of time, but thank you very much indeed for taking part in this edition of Talking Europe. Please stay with us. We'll return after the news break. We'll bring you an interview with Etienne Davignon, former Vice President of the European Commission and President of the Friends of Europe think tank.